So where do we start? What kind of sport would a sport called Australia be? Would it be some horrible combination of cricket, rugby, MMA, AFL? Or would it be some kind of reality show based around avoiding shark attacks? What would the athletic DNA be for a sport called Australia? I know this much. If Australia were a sport, it would test heat tolerance, pain tolerance, dehydration, balance, profanity, even urban survival, maybe even on the clock. What about the field? You know, the game board. I personally picture it being played on some giant circular field 400 meters across with no consistent terrain, no roof, and no sympathy. My mind's eye pictures concentric rings getting tighter and tighter as the terrain gets harder and harder. You go from sand to scorching desert dirt to a center circle of concrete just put there for the mere intention to show that even if you win, you have to get hurt when you do it. Each region of Australia could have their own game boards or specific difficulties. Queensland would be speed and humidity. Victoria would be tactical confusion. New South Wales would be hostile energy and sledging. And Western Australia would be distance. Endless distance. To represent cricket fairly, the game would start on Monday and end on Friday. Tasmania would look harmless right up until they told you about the local history, and then you'd stop asking questions. Naturally, the weather would not pause the game. I would think that when they were laying down the ground rules for the sport, someone in an official capacity had said something about reasonable precautions, and they took it personally. Now, as fantasy league as this is, similar to AFL, the sport of Australia would be one of those competitions where it's kind of impossible to tell how many people are actually involved. I would think that in a game called Australia, that the purpose of the sport would be to break you down one piece at a time and basically expose the weakest link, in which case having a hard-to-define number of players on the field would probably end up being just a redundancy. I guess in Australia, the actual competitors could be any number of different people or things. The crowd, the weather, the wildlife. Queenslanders would say toughness matters most. New South Wales would probably say structure matters most. Victoria would probably create an entirely different form of the game and wonder why the rest of the country isn't obsessed with it. Western Australia would have to travel through 9,000 kilometers of nothingness just to get to the warm-ups, so we'll give them the edge in toughness. Northern Territory, well, that's not a team. That's a boss. Now, what about the rules? This is the big one. This is where the sport of Australia is going to completely separate itself from every other game on the planet. Well, as per our 8 rules of Fight Club, I guess rule number 1 would probably be complaining does not stop the clock. Complaining is useless. In fact, taking your eye off the ball might be a bad idea. How do we score here? How do we keep score? Where do the points come from? I'm thinking about something that's kind of a blend between keep away and dodgeball, where points are awarded for moments, not necessarily plays. And how do you succeed by doing something difficult and pretending it looks easy? 3 points for making a ridiculously reckless play and succeeding. 1 point for being in the wrong place at the wrong time but still making it look good. Committing to a decision before fully understanding it and still making it work. 2 points for instigating an altercation but not throwing the first punch. Style points would be awarded for elegance, continuing after an obvious injury, and not spilling your beer. Style points would be awarded not for elegance or overstatement, but for understatement. Because from what I've learned in Australia, the greatest achievement isn't doing something difficult. It's about doing something difficult and acting like you were mildly delayed. Rolled a ute, got chased by something. Sun almost killed us. Penalties and fouls. Of course, there have to be some, for the simple necessity of keeping this a sport and not letting it turn into the purge. Excessive whining, visible hesitation, asking too many safety questions, Basically, the officials of the game have the right to penalize any team for anything they deem unbecoming of the sport. Now, if that sounds kind of broad and ambiguous, it's supposed to be. This would be extremely difficult for foreign teams just learning the game. The officials can decide what level of penalty follows what level of either one of those. I think that in a sport called Australia, that the fans would basically be their own weather system. Hot, loud, sarcastic, unpredictable. There'd be entire sections of the stadium just dedicated to heckling. I could see a grand final purposely being played in the worst conditions possible that were still legally acceptable. Blazing heat, questionable visibility. From what I can see, if you're standing on the outside looking in on Australia, everything might seem like chaos. From the inside, it seems to me at least to operate on a very specific principle. Difficult, dangerous, uncomfortable, or just fucking hard. It's probably worth doing.